We're going to be talking about how you make your comeback. And this is, in my opinion, one of the best things that we could talk about in a time when the pandemic has been crazy and when the world is struggling to try to figure out its path. As a business owner, I've been in business since 1999. My first job out of college, I worked with the state of Texas, with Texas Employment Commission back before it became Texas Workforce Commission. And I worked with people who were coming out of prison to help them figure out a path, find a job, stay employed, and kind of get their lives together. So I started with that sociology, psychology aspect of business. Then I went to work for the Boy Scouts of America. I did fundraising for them, and I also designed training programs for them. Had a blast in the 4 years that I was designing outdoor learning adventures, and then went into business for myself in 99. And I've been in business ever since then, and I've seen a lot of ups and downs in this world from September 11th, 2001, when the world really came crashing down. And I thought, oh my gosh, not only was it such a tragedy, it also had this ripple effect throughout business and within the training industry. What we discovered was that people started getting scared and they pulled back. So about half of our revenue went away just like that. And I thought, man, I'll never see anything that bad again. And I went from roughly 200,000 down to about 90,000 in revenue that I had on the books for the 12 months following 9/11. We got all of our money back, but in the time, I was learning the lessons of how do you create a tenacity and a focus that help you overcome any struggle. I had a fantastic coach, guy named Mike Grigsby, that was working with me at the time, who helped me realize I've already done this before. So when I lost all my revenue, he sat me down and he goes, "So let me ask you a few questions." He said, "Number one, have you ever built a business before?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I had a great business going until this happened." He said, "Wow, so you've done this before. That's fantastic." And he said, "Second question, are you all the way back down at zero, or do you have some revenue left?" I'm like, "No, I've got some revenue, about half of my revenue." He goes, "You're already halfway there. This is fantastic news." And he kind of just did this shock and awe thing in my mind to help me realize making a comeback a lot of times is remembering where you've been and figuring out your pathway back to that. But it's also remembering that at some point in the future, we'll face another struggle. When we face that struggle, we want to make sure that the lessons that we learned from the last struggle are still in place. So, as we go through today, we're going to be talking about several fantastic things. We're going to be talking about how you look at your potential within your future. Seeing your own potential shifts your focus and starts to modify your emotional state. Once you can get yourself in the right state, I think what you start to figure out is my emotions are controlling my actions. Controlling your own emotional states makes it where you can take action even in a difficult situation because you stay focused in the right direction. Second thing is we'll talk about what your plan has to be for overcoming this challenge and getting your business and your life back on track. Third, I'm going to talk about what eliminates some of the barriers and makes it much easier for you to succeed. And then fourth, we'll talk about how you get yourself and your team on the right path so that no matter what challenge you face, your innovation and your creativity are out in front of you and you're ready to go. There are four basic needs that we have related to our personality, and these are in opposition to one another. A lot of us are looking for security or certainty. We want to know exactly what to expect and exactly when to expect it. But on the other side of the spectrum, we want to know that there's some variety and some excitement in our life. You're wired typically for one or the other being dominant, particularly related to your working life. I'm not wired for the desperate need for security. I'm more wired for the need for variety. My wife, on the other hand, is wired for security. And I think opposites attract, and that's why we balance one another out. But you think about that difference. When you go to work every day, what is it that you're looking for? To know exactly what to expect or to have variety slash what some people would call excitement in your life? The second continua that we face with our personality is, are we searching for significance, like individually, I value, I matter, or connection? I want to be a part of a tribe or a part of a team or a group. You'll find that a lot of entrepreneurs are more driven by the significance than they are the connection. And a lot of people that you would consider quote unquote team players are driven by the connection over the significance. Those go back and forth, and you're typically wired for one more than the other. And then the two needs that are last, growth and purpose, these are not needs of the personality. These are more needs of your subconscious mind. The way that you were brought up, what you went through, how you developed into who you are determines whether or not you're driven by, I need to move forward, that forward momentum, or I need to know that I'm making a contribution or fulfilling a purpose that's going to have a lasting impact. You can have both of these or neither of these. They are not in opposition with one another. It's just security versus variety and significance versus connection. Now, I'm driven very much by purpose as my number one. I desperately want to do something that has a lasting impact on this world and makes the world a better place. But I also know that I'm driven by that idea of forward momentum. The reason that I struggled even as a kid to, as my father put it, just be content is that every time I accomplished something, I thought, but what's next? And I would imagine a lot of you identify with that same feeling of what is next for us and how do we move ourselves forward so that we continue on that path of growth and we continue to make a difference. We're always facing one direction or another for our life. In every situation that you face, you always have an opportunity. I've coached hundreds and hundreds of executives over the last 2 decades, and some of them will say things like, well, I have no other choice but to do X. And the simple truth is, you always have a choice to do something different than the one path you're seeing right now. It's just that if you're only facing in that one direction, you're not going to know where else you could go. So when you step back from what's going on in the world around you and you say, I can either keep doing what I'm doing, and if it's not getting the results that I want right now, I can anticipate I'll keep not getting the results that I want, or I can pivot. I can start to shift away from where I'm at and start embracing a new way of doing business and a new way of making things happen. I want to give you a few examples of companies that have pivoted during their careers. Apple did amazing when they first came out. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were geniuses in their own right. Wozniak was really the tech genius, and Jobs was the marketing and promotional genius. There were three primary reasons, though, that they went down before they came back up. The first reason was that leadership was focused on the wrong development. They started trying to create everything for everyone, and they were making things so expensive and so broad that people really didn't know what they did or what they stood for. The second is they had too many directions, not enough focus. When they started creating the Lucy computer, which was, if you watched the documentary or read about Steve Jobs, his first daughter that he did not claim as his daughter, she was named Lucy, and he started thinking, man, I feel guilty about this, and I feel like I need to do something to make up for it. Now, when he started trying to quote unquote do something to make up for it, what he started doing was making products that honestly she was never going to care about, but made him feel better based on what he was doing. And then the third was they had intense competition with Bill Gates and with Microsoft. When Windows 95 came out, it was what you see is what you get, kind of a point and click with a mouse, which had been created more by actually IBM and then adopted by Apple. And then when Microsoft modeled it, they started moving far in front of what Apple had as far as their market share. Amazon went from $361 a share, which isn't too bad in 1998, to less than $6 a share in 2001. In hindsight, I really wish I would have bought a lot of Amazon stock because they're a couple $1,000s a share today. The reason cited for that drop was poor morale and lack of teamwork. They didn't have enough staff and quite regularly would ask their staff, hey, can you ask your family if they can work for us this weekend? And they would bring in family. And then they had really horrible back end production systems. So their organizing systems didn't make a lot of sense. They were kind of all over the board. Amazon has revolutionized the way that you do inventory control, and they do it in a way that doesn't make sense to a lot of organizations, but it's so driven by computers and systems and geolocation that they can almost never lose anything because of the way they laid it out. Converse dominated by 80% of the athletic shoe market and then dropped to less than 2%. If you look back into the very, very early stages of our athletic shoes being out there, the Chuck Taylor, Chuck Taylor was a basketball player. He was the first endorsed athlete. Converse signed him, and eventually Chuck Taylor came up with what he very creatively called the basketball shoe, which was the first high top. When he did that and he went around promoting, and Converse was really the only game in the market. There was a couple of other little fledgling companies, but nothing really to speak of. They figured we can never be beaten. If you think that there is no need for innovation, what happens is somebody like, say, Nike or Adidas comes along and they start competing for better athletes, better known athletes to sign for their shoes. And Adidas almost got Jordan, but Nike ended up with Jordan. Michael Jordan is one of the primary reasons that Nike took over the shoe market, because everybody wanted the Air Jordans because of Michael Jordan. So they had a lack of innovation, a lack of endorsement, and they got stuck pre 1970. Interestingly enough, Nike ended up buying Converse after they dropped to less than 2% of the shoe market, and has brought them back up to about 8% of the shoe market now. And it is for people that are rockers and for teenagers and people that just think that retro look is super cool. And they've used the shoes from that perspective. I tell you about these companies because I want you to think about the reasons that companies don't succeed. Peter Drucker said that there's two primary reasons that a company will not make it anytime they face a crisis. The first is innovation. If you look at what Apple did, Apple innovated, but they innovated in a new way when Jobs came back. They didn't recreate the smartphone. All they did is looked at what BlackBerry had done and said, what if we remove the buttons and make the screen a whole lot bigger? I think people would like that better. So they ended up just small innovations, and they dumped a ton of money into marketing. And it's the marketing that made the difference. Amazon started to innovate in the way that they tracked customer buying patterns. And they created the first click to buy function for any website. Now, think about what that does to you. I don't know if you've shopped a lot on Amazon like I have, but I'm on a first name basis with my UPS driver because of my Amazon habits. But you can be looking at something and you just go click, and you bought it and it's being shipped to you. You don't think about it. You don't have time for buyer's remorse. There's no calculations. It just looked good, impulse buy, go. Amazon also used big data as a part of their innovation to determine that people who buy this thing also buy these other three. And they would start serving up ideas to you of what you should buy based on what you've bought before or what you've looked at. Then they started marketing like crazy within their own system. They also allowed other people to advertise, which helped pay for Amazon's growth. So they would allow their competitors to put ads within Amazon in order to promote their products outside of Amazon. What they found, though, is the advertising dollars were spent, but then that, man, free 2-day shipping, you just couldn't compete with it, which was another one of their innovations. Now, we know that athletic shoes can be or I think you know, that they can be a very high profit item. I sold shoes for 5 years for JCPenney's and then also for Foot Action. And when I look back to that time in high school and college, I remember meeting with one of the Reebok reps and discovering that most of the Reeboks that were made for about $5 per pair of shoes. That was it. And they were selling for $60 to $100 at the time. And the Reebok Pump was the first Air Up shoe that came out, and that was about $120. Their innovation was tied directly to how they marketed the shoe. You know, you would pump that shoe up, and then you could run and slam dunk a basketball. Never worked for me, by the way. At 5'9", I never slam dunked the basketball, even though I bought the Reebok pumps. But they were really good at creating an emotional state. And that's what we as business leaders have to do, is create emotional states that make people want to move forward with us. There's a number of people that have struggled over the years. I want you to think about Bethany Hamilton, who was a surfer. As a teenage surfer, she was out surfing with some of her friends, and she got her entire arm and part of her shoulder bitten off by a shark. In less than 24 months, she came back. Her father modified a surfboard, put a little loop so she could hold it with one hand to go under the waves, and competed in the normal competitions that she was in and won a national surfing title. She didn't quit. That was one of the determining factors. Dr. Angela Duckworth talks about grit, or your ability to get up one more time than what you get knocked down, as a key factor for your success. Tim Ferriss was rejected 26 times by publishers for his first book, The 4 Hour Work Week. After 4 years in business, no vacations, and no days off at all, he finally took a 30-day vacation to go visit a friend of his in England. That turned into an 18-month world tour. He wrote the book and started sending off manuscripts to publishers. It was no, stupidest idea I've ever heard. Would never consider publishing a book like that. Nobody would ever buy it. But number 27 did. Number 27 said, "Man, that's such an interesting concept." I remember a quote by Benjamin Franklin saying, "At some point, we will advance technology to the point where we can accomplish in 4 hours what used to take us 40." And so he published the book. And in less than a year, he was a New York Times bestseller based on his very first published book. And he was in his 20s. Stephen King was a janitor, and he was rejected 30 times for his book Carrie before he finally found a publisher for it. His wife, after 29 rejections, she said, "Look, just try 2 more times. If you don't get it published within 2 more times, I'll never bug you again about writing. You can just be a janitor for the rest of your life." And he had not gone to college, and that he just thought, "I just don't want to be stuck. I want to move forward." Number 31 said yes, and he has gone on since then to sell over 300 million copies of his books, and to absolutely make it impossible for young kids to sleep around clowns. So he has changed the world in one way or another. I'm still a little freaked out by the clowns. Several of you are as well. Michael Jordan missed 9,000 shots during his basketball career. 26 different times he was counted on to take the game-winning shot, and he missed. So you think about those failures. One of the things that Jordan has said over and over again is it's because of those failures that he succeeded. He was cut from his high school basketball team, not because he wasn't talented, but because he was arrogant and lazy. And his coach told him, "I don't want anybody with your attitude on my team." Freshman year, even though he was the best ball player in the entire school, he didn't work at it. And the coach knew he would get passed over. The coach told him, "If you will come every day after school for an hour and every morning before school for an hour for the whole school year, the next year you can play for me, but you're not playing this year." He did. And the next year he started, and he goes back and credits in several of his interviews that coach for the reason he's known as the greatest of all time. The reason he was so good at basketball was because somebody told him, "You've got to work harder." Thomas Edison was kicked out of school because he was, quote unquote, too stupid to learn at about 10 years old, worked on a train car, got fired from that for accidentally catching the caboose on fire while doing science experiments on his own. Then, because he was used to selling candy and newspapers up and down the aisles, he had lost his source of revenue for helping his mother. So instead of standing on a street corner selling newspapers as people walked by, he negotiated the very first deal at 11 years old with a building owner to deliver newspapers up and down the building, and thereby became the very first paper boy. He then hired a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds to actually do the work and kept half the money for himself. The key is you've got to get up one more time than you get knocked down. Within your mind, all you have to think is just one more, just one more. And I love the idea of just one more because growing up doing martial arts and being very competitive in several sports, It was always just one more rep, just one more time, just one more exercise, and you get to move forward. But it's that attitude that we have to develop in the face of tough times. You see, your mind is broken into both a conscious and a subconscious side to the mind. The conscious mind processes 2,000 bits per second of information. If each bit is a drop of water, in 60 seconds, you could fill a water bottle up. So 1 minute, you fill a water bottle. But the subconscious mind processes 400 billion bits per second of information. That means if each bit is a drop of water, then in 60 seconds, you could fill an Olympic sized swimming pool. That's the difference between the two sides of the mind. We give suggestions from the conscious mind into the subconscious, and then the subconscious says, oh, okay, that's our marching orders. That's what we want to notice. Within the subconscious, you have two key components. One is called the reticular activating system, and it's like a rudder. It steers you in one direction or another based on what you said you want to look for. It determines what comes into conscious awareness and what is ignored or deleted and distorted. And then the second component of the mind is what's called the apperception mass. And it is right down at the very base of the brain in the back, and it is about the size of the end of your pinky. That is where all of your previous experiences, where we put the meaning of those experiences. Let's say that you went through a tough time in the past and you labeled it, I never win. That label, next time you face something tough, is going to pop back up and go, hey, don't forget, you never win. But if you peel that label off, and there's a process for doing that, but if you peel that label off and you say, okay, the label that serves me is I always learn a lesson that moves me forward next time. Now we have something that's useful for us. So in any situation, you want to be evaluating what was that thought that just popped into my head when I faced this challenge. Yesterday, for example, I got a rock chip in my windshield. We're doing a ton of construction where I live. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. So my initial thought is something always happens. And then I overrode that thought with, but something better always happens afterwards. So when you have a negative thought, think of something that is an overriding thought, something that you can put on top of that to say, this serves me better. I would rather think something better is about to happen. And the simple truth is, you can believe whatever you want. Your experience of life and your experience of this world is determined more by what you choose to see rather than what's actually out there. Dr. Richard Bandler and Dr. John Grinder in the 1980s started looking at the way that the human mind works. And the fundamental principle of what they called neuro-linguistic programming is the statement, the map is not the territory. You look at a map of the United States, that's not the actual United States. Just like if you had a map of your neighborhood, it wouldn't have built to scale little houses or buildings on the map itself. It would have, here's a square, that's the block that you're on. And these gray lines, those are your roads. And that blue, that's water. And that green, that's a big field. So we have these generalizations that we go by on any map that help us make sense of things and recall very quickly. We also distort stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense to us. If you have a fundamental belief that the world is here for you and for your success, then when things go wrong, you'll distort it in a positive light. If you believe the world is against you and trying to hold you back, then whatever happens, you'll distort it in a negative light. And then you will delete things that completely go against what you believe. One of the reasons we typically tell people don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics in the workplace is because whatever one person says, if it goes against the fundamental beliefs of another person, they will just delete the statement, and you're not getting to any kind of a collaborative environment. You're typically just creating a little more chaos. So we delete, we distort, and we generalize. And we do this on a consistent basis because when we are doing that, it makes for an easier way to recall. So the question that we just got is, what about being unbiased and not having a view that something is good or bad? So that would be referencing a philosophy typically referred to as Stoicism, which is not allowing your emotional states to control you, but simply saying, I choose not to assign meaning to this. A fundamental belief that has served me well is living more by that Stoic philosophy. And I've studied the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius and of Epictetus. And then more recently, Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. If you've not read that book, it is a phenomenal overview of how you remain unbiased in any situation. I believe that being unbiased simplifies your life quite a bit. However, that's still distorting things in order to fit a belief system of things are neither good nor bad. Everybody is going to delete, distort, and generalize based on what's going on in their own head, and that's what moves us forward. It can also hold us back if the beliefs are wrong or they're disempowering. If you want to be successful, you do have to first learn to control your emotions. The human being is the only animal that is able to completely override emotions should they choose to. But it's a fundamental belief that I am growth minded rather than fixed minded. In other words, I don't have fixed characteristics of who I am. I am intelligent because I worked hard. I am driven because I chose to get up and take action every single day and demonstrate drive. Those would be choices that we make even in the face of negative emotions. uh, I've talked with a number of people about ways to protect your mind from the negative emotions, one of which is staying focused on what can I do right now, as opposed to why is this happening to me? If you're always asking the question, why is this happening? Then you're allowing your emotions to respond. And at a subconscious level, we are driven to give an answer. Why is this happening? My mind might go, because you're a moron. And then that's the response. I'm like, oh, I feel horrible now. But instead of saying, why is this happening? I go to step two, what can I do? When I plan my daily outcomes, in other words, the 3 to 5 things that I will achieve on a daily basis, then I set myself up for success. We take this idea of strategic planning to this unbelievable level of we need a 5 and a 10 and a 20 and a 50 and a 200-year plan. And I am all for planning our future out and creating a compelling future. However, the part that we typically skip when we're creating a plan for our next year is we don't go back and say, quarter by quarter, what are the outcomes or the measurables so that I know that I'm on track? Each month within each of those quarters, what are the outcomes? Each week within each of those months? And then ultimately, what are the 3 to 5 things that I can do every single day in order to ensure that I'm getting the outcome that I want? Then the third piece of your success plan has to be getting accurate feedback. Small business development centers have been phenomenal for this. I used them quite a bit when I first went into business to go in and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking on my business plan. Can you give me some feedback? And several times they're like, you're crazy. It's never going to work. And they were right on several of them. So we would modify and we would adjust. And I went back to school and got more education. I did all the things that I could do to get feedback on the way that I needed to develop myself related to business. You've got to find somebody that can be really, really honest with you. Since my first month in business, I have always had a business coach. I am 21, almost 21 years into business now, and I still have a business coach, somebody who gives me feedback and who is brutally honest with me. You can get coaches that are nice if that is what you need. I needed somebody that was just going to be really direct and go, that's not going to work. Stop doing that. You're going to kill your business. Because I needed that directness based on my personality. So find a coach that fits your personality and your value system, or go to the Small Business Development Center, or take some extra college classes, or get around people that are like-minded and trying to find success, and you guys feed off of each other. But whatever you do, find yourself a tribe of people that want you to succeed and that you want honest feedback from, because the feedback is invaluable. So here is how you control your emotional states. In the center, you see that triangle. Start with, what is your conscious focus? Conscious meaning chosen. I will choose to focus on what I can do, not what I cannot do. I will choose to focus on the next opportunity instead of on the setback. My conscious focus is that I will always move forward. When the pandemic started, I lost significantly more revenue this time than I did with 9/11, or more than I did in the 2008 economic downturn. All of my revenue went away overnight. Friday, the 13th of March, full moon. I mean, it's like the trifecta of everything's going to go wrong. We got email after email after email that for the next 90 days, everything was on hold. It's not that they said, we never want to do business with you. They just said, for the next 90 days, we don't know what's going to happen. So we're going to step back and we're not going to do any business. So you're not going to be coming in anymore. I have a 24-hour rule. My 24-hour rule is it's perfectly okay to be angry or upset or depressed for 24 hours. Then you've got to shift your focus. So I give myself a little time to sit with the emotion if I need to, and then I refocus on what I can do. The second thing that I do in that 24-hour rule is I also give myself 24 hours to celebrate something big, and then I refocus on taking action and continuing to move forward. I control my focus. The second thing I control is what I say in my own head. When you start hearing yourself say something negative like, "Oh man, I'm such a," and you're about to say idiot or moron or something negative, say, "I am such a learner and I am growing every day." Shift it in the middle of the conversation inside your head. Everybody talks to themselves. That's actually a sign of intelligence. When you're talking to yourself, just make sure that it serves you and it doesn't restrict you. And then the third way that you control your emotional state is the way that you carry yourself, your physical body language. Try this in the car when you're driving today, if you're going anywhere, or just stare in a mirror. Either one works. Great big smile on your face and just smile for 2 straight minutes. It's unbelievable what it starts to do inside your head. Your physical body language actually controls the chemical and hormonal productions within the human brain. It determines whether what's called a neuro reuptake inhibitor opens up and absorbs dopamine and serotonin or closes off. When all of our body language is internal or closed down, we start to restrict the absorption of serotonin and dopamine in the brain, the happy drugs. When our body language is open and we look happy, it actually opens up those receptors and allows us to absorb more of the dopamine and more of the serotonin. Controlling your body language controls what physically happens in your head. Controlling your conscious focus suggests from the conscious to the subconscious mind what to notice. And then controlling your self talk determines how you label yourself. Those three things are unbelievable at emotional states. Now, our inspiring future has to be that because we're choosing to focus on what we can do, we're looking into the future and determining what we're going to do. And we have to have this image and this experience of everything at a fundamentally happy level. Today is, and you would say August 4th, 2021. Here's all the great things that are happening right now. So you go forward 1 year into the future and then say in present tense what everything is like. That allows your subconscious to believe it and to aspire to that future. And then at the bottom of that circle, kind of what encircles our emotional states and where our future is going to go, is what is your core purpose? I am here to help people live into their potential so that they experience a more fulfilled life. Knowing that I'm here to help people live into their full potential and knowing that the outcome is that their life is more fulfilled allows me to shape every decision that I make. If something doesn't fit with my core purpose, I go in a different direction. That's what we as individuals have to do within our own business, is control what the future looks like, what the purpose of the company is, and the emotional states that we and others experience so that we keep ourselves on the right track. Now, this daily plan is critically important for this. I have a routine that I start with every single day. I get up at 6, I read for 30 minutes and study. Then I get ready and I eat breakfast and I do all my things to be ready for my day. But I start with the thing that's most important to me. If I don't learn something, I don't have anything to share. 30 minutes of reading every single morning sets you in the right path to have something to offer the rest of the world. Read about what your business is, read industry magazines and journals, read research about it, watch TED Talks about it, do something that moves you and your business forward every single morning, because it also helps you to start focusing on what can I do? So if you think about that future date, today is, and you put a date in the future, it can be anywhere in the future you want, 30 days, 60 days, 11 months, a year, 4 years, whatever, and then write down what life is like right now. Then think backwards using your memory. Okay, in order to have achieved that, every quarter I did X, and then every month I did this, and every week I did this. And then you get to the final piece. What are my 5 or fewer daily actions that will get me the success that I want? Success is not that difficult, even in tough times. In fact, the companies that make the most money and move forward the most quickly are the ones that during a down economy decide to become more assertive in their innovation and their marketing and have a stronger belief in, I can do something today. And every single day they do something that creates success. When you meet with your teams, ask the question, what are the 5 things that you specifically can do each day that will move you forward and help create the success that we're looking for? My legacy is what I do on a daily basis. And if you look at what a life plan could look like, I did this exercise every day for over a month when I first went into business. You write down 3 things that you want to accomplish in your life, 3 things in the next year, 3 things in the next month, and 3 things in the next week. Every day, you write those down. And then you write down, what's my plan for today? What you start to realize is a lot of times our daily plan will not get us to the week, month, year, or life that we want to live. So we have to step back and figure out, what are the 20% of the things that I'm doing that are creating 80% of the outcomes that I want in my life. You'll also start to identify that our initial goals are a lot of times what other people might think was impressive. I started with, I want X millions of dollars and I want a ranch and I want all these things at the end of my life. I grew up with farming and ranching. I went to college because I didn't want to be a farmer and a rancher. I have a lot of respect for farmers and ranchers and a lot of them in my family, but that's really hard work. And I didn't want to do that. I'm more of an intellectual. So I wanted to do something different. After about a month of figuring out what I wanted for my life, I came down to, I want to leave a legacy of success within business. I want to stay married to the same woman, and I want to be a really cool granddad. And I didn't even have but one kid, and she was about a year old at the time when I started doing this. But those were the 3 things that stuck that would be my legacy for my life. So then I started thinking, well, what do I have to do in the next year to move myself forward on those things? And then the next month, and then the next week. And then what do I have to do today and every day in order to keep that flow? If you'll think of it from the flow of daily to weekly to monthly to annual to lifetime, what you'll find is legacy is not difficult. Legacy is consistent daily behavioral patterns. And when you live into those patterns, your life gets on track. Your accurate feedback is required. If you do the same old thing over and over again, you go with what Einstein defined as insanity. If I do the same thing over and over again and I keep anticipating different results, that is the definition of being insane. We want new thinking in order to get new results. That means we have to get feedback from people, or we have to be in a mastermind group or getting to a coaching or mentoring relationship. I have a mastermind group that I meet with every Sunday morning for breakfast. I also have a coach, and both of those, the individual coach and that group of other entrepreneurs that I have breakfast with, give me great feedback. We run our ideas past each other and we ask one another, will this help me live into my mission? That's the question that you want to ask. My purpose or my mission, is what I'm about to do going to get me there? There are some things that make success a whole lot easier for you. The first is proximity. Proximity is power. You've got to be around other like-minded individuals that are driven, that are exciting, that are learning, that are growing. I was told by my very first mentor in my life, I was about 11 years old, and this guy named Joe Brock used to sit and visit with me. He was a very successful entrepreneur and a friend of my father's, and he would tell me all about hanging out with the kind of people that are going to the right places. So you want to evaluate, am I in proximity of other great people? Going to training programs, participating in webinars, those are the things that give you the proximity that you're looking for and allow you to live into what your life's purpose is. There are several aspects to proximity that you want to be careful of. One is you do have to limit the negative people or the people that try to tear you down from having access to you. In 2012, I had a guy that I used to go to coffee with every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. I don't like going for coffee at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, but that was the time that worked for him, and I had trouble saying no. And he would just complain and gripe, and the world is horrible, and his ex-wife is crazy, and all kinds of stuff that he would gripe about every Saturday. And I would listen, and I would listen, and I would drink my coffee. And the whole time I'm thinking, I feel horrible. I think the world is bad now. And it was bringing me down. Well, I made a New Year's resolution in January of 2012, and this was going on in 2011 as well as in the very first part of 2012. I finally decided my New Year's resolution is I'm not going to hang out with people that bring me down. So he calls me, he goes, "Hey, we going to coffee on Saturday?" And I simply responded, "No." I didn't give an answer as to why. I didn't justify it. I just said no. And he goes, "Oh, okay." I didn't hear from him for 7 years. In 2019, I ran into him. He was still griping about all the same stuff that he was upset about in 2012. He's like, "Man, we need to get together for coffee." And I just go, "No." And I haven't seen him since then. So you don't have to complicate the process of limiting access to you from people that are not nice or don't really care about you. Just say no. I think no is probably the hardest word in the English language. I'm sorry is much easier than no. The second thing I would say on proximity is you've got to intentionally seek out people that are at a higher level than you are and try to offer them something of value. When I hang out with really successful entrepreneurs now, I go out of my way to try to do something that improves their life or provides value to them so that they want to be around me. I don't simply go to them and say, "Oh man, I'd really like to learn from you." Instead, I say, "Can I take a course that you offer, or can I hire you as my coach or my mentor, or can I wash your car?" I mean, I've made all kinds of random offers to be around the people that I wanted to be around so that I could learn from them. I also have conversation starters that I have come up with that I use in order to learn from them. The second piece of making success easier is controlling your purpose with emotion. You think about getting your goals on target, and I'm going to run through this very, very quickly. Think from the end back to the beginning. Target is an acronym. Assess your skills and what's missing. Recruit the help or talent you need. And that could be in the form of taking classes, reading books, getting a coach, doing something like that. The G in target is give it emotions, because our positive emotions towards an end goal and our negative emotions on avoiding a wrong objective will keep driving us forward. The E is every detail matters. And the T is talk about your goal. So think from the end to the beginning, assess your skills and what's missing, recruit the talent that's needed to get you where you want to go, give it emotions, every detail matters, track everything, and then talk about your goal. When you do those things, you remember that your purpose, that end goal that you've got in front of you, is the driver for your success. And you stay focused on the right things instead of the limitations. So think about these four things. You've got to build that routine. We talked about the life to the year to the month to the week to the day. You've got to develop the potential of the people around you, because the more you raise them up, the more you raise up your organization. That's why I send my people to seminars and webinars and retreats every year so that they get to learn and they get to grow. We also require that our teams read. We want you to learn. You can listen to an audiobook or you can read a physical book or a Kindle. I don't care how you do it, but you've got to read and you've got to share what you're learning with the rest of the team. Every single day, I measure my daily outcomes, and I do that through a journaling process where in the morning, I set three key objectives for the day. That's my 3 to 5 things. I typically try to keep it to three. And then at the end of the day, I write down 3 wins. Ideally, what I intended to do and what I want at should match up. Even if it doesn't, though, I'm still measuring my outcomes or my wins for the day. And then finally, surround yourself with great people. If you don't have greatness around you, what you're going to figure out is that you start craving a positive emotional state. And it's very, very difficult to get there on your own. When you surround yourself with like minded people that are all going in the right direction, then it becomes much easier to build yourself up because other people are also building you up. I am in a number of Facebook groups that are really positive. I take courses. I do all kinds of things to keep my emotional state right, including conscious focus, physical body language, and self talk. Those are the core, but I also know that I need some external motivation as well. So, getting us on the right path, we're trying to keep our emotions positive and strong. There's different things that different people do. Still an exerciser. I still like that competition, and I create competitive objectives with myself, like how fast can I run a mile, or how many pounds can I lift in a day of weightlifting, or how many push-ups can I do in a day. Those kinds of things are competitions that still serve me, but I'm not really competing with anybody but me. I just know that physical exercise helps me clear my mind and keep myself on track. It's also been scientifically proven to release endorphins in your brain, which also stimulate serotonin and dopamine, or the happy drugs. Meditation works really well for a lot of people. Some people just, my wife likes to go walk around stores. That's what gets her emotions positive. Fantastic. Do the thing every single day if you can that keeps your emotions on the right track. Second, never stop developing the potential of your people. There is so much education out there and so many opportunities for us. Every single day on Amazon, more than 4,500 brand new books are published 7 days a week. That is a lot of new content out there. I read a lot of books. Typically, I read between 30 and 40 books a year every single year. When I first went into business, my first mentor challenged me. I expect you to read at least one book per month for personal development for the rest of your life. Otherwise, I won't mentor you. This was a multimillionaire, very good at retail, wonderful with people. And I was like, I really want to be mentored by this guy, and I don't have to spend any money on him. I just have to read books. So the first book that he gave me was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the best-selling self-help book of all time. The second book that he gave me was by Michael Gerber, called The E-Myth. I read both of those books. One of them inspired me and one of them scared me. Napoleon Hill inspired me and Gerber kind of scared me. And I think he was trying to give me a balance of focus on the things that you can do and create your burning desire and an organized plan for its attainment, and surround yourself with the great people, always deliver more than what you're paid for. All of the 13 principles of success that Hill talks about. And then Gerber talked about systemizing it all so that you don't fail. In using what I got from those first two books that I read when I went into business, I created a platform and a plan for how I was going to succeed. And I have read over 1,000 books since I went into business. I had one year that I just went nuts and read, I think over 100 books in one year. It was kind of crazy. So I know Lucy's taking off here. I appreciate you being on here. We're about to wrap up with this. There's several different programs that we have found to be really helpful right now in getting our businesses back on track. One is that our customers and our employees need to feel safe when they come back to work. We created a course called Clean and Safe that is a training on how to clean your organization, disinfect things, and also create emotional and professional safety so that when people come back to work, they feel good about who they are and where they are. We have a course called Supervisor 101 that talks about how you create the right motivated and engaged workforce, how you communicate effectively, how you leverage your talent, and how you create positive accountability. We have Leadership Mastery, which is self leadership and then leadership of others. We have a Sales 101, and we're about to release a Sales Mastery course, which is really in depth on how you create growth opportunities within any industry using a tactic where you never feel like you're selling. If you're like me, the idea of selling kind of freaked me out when I first went into business. Like, I don't want to cold call everybody and offend people. And that was what I was worried about. So we created a system of how you provide value and then how you use that value provision to inspire other people to buy from you. So you never have to sell, you just provide value and they seek ways to do business with you. Then we have Service 101, which is how you create raving fans and loyal customers. Using that model of generating positive emotional states in other people, it stimulates their desire to do more work with you and more business with you. And then finally, every single month, we're doing an update because right now, human resource rules and regulations are changing drastically. So we're staying in front of all of the changes that are happening within the nation. And then we're also have been hired to do some very specific states to make sure we stay in front of those as well. So we started with the basis of understanding human resource challenges, 90% people, 10% systems, and then we're doing rules and regulations updates on a monthly basis. We are about to also release a diversity and inclusion course that's been a collaborative effort between me and several other trainers, which is phenomenal. And it talks about how you create an equitable workplace, which in the end, that's what all of us are looking for. We all want to know that we have equity or we're being paid for the same job in the same way. Because in the end, without equity, that's what creates the division and the upset in one group or another. All of us want equity. That's what diversity and inclusion is ultimately about. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I have really enjoyed doing this program. If you want to get with me, if you'll just email jody@jodyholland.com, there are some great resources through Del Mar College that you can a lot of times get your trainings paid for you because they've got some amazing grant opportunities. So if you're a business looking to grow your teams or grow yourself, please reach out to us. We would love to help in any way that we can. We're doing this also in partnership in Abilene, Texas, as well as in Amarillo, Texas. So 3 different parts of Texas: Corpus, Abilene, and Amarillo, and hopefully very soon in San Angelo as well, to try to just help businesses get back on track and master the skills that they need in order to be successful. If you did enjoy this, please make sure you tell other people about future trainings that Del Mar is hosting and that we're hosting, because we would love to help you in any way we can to grow your business and to be successful. And would love, if you have any questions in the future, feel free to reach out. So Del Mar College and TWC have COVID-19 funding. This is from Belinda. Free training dollars with an exclamation point. So make sure that you reach out. If you don't have that information, find it. Whatever you have to do, find it. I have benefited so much from what junior colleges have provided and from my partnerships with them, as well as from what Small Business Development Center and the Workforce Center through their skills development have done for me and my business. So thank you guys. This is going to be edited and put onto YouTube, and we will send the link back out to you. So thank you again for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.